Hello, everyone. In a separate video, we've discussed about the 8 steps to problem-solving process, but that's only on a high level. If you haven't watched it, please do so. It discusses about the PDCA cycle to begin with. Now, for this particular video, we'll start diving deeper into each of those steps of the practical problem-solving process. Now, we start first with step 1 under planning. We clarify the problem. So as an overview, guys, these steps has really many aspects associated with it. The first of which is to always protect the customer. Of course, the customer through containment. Now, this might require applying a so-called band-aid for the short term until a more permanent solution can be found. You see, it doesn't really matter how you accomplish this, and you might need to throw people, money, or even inventory at the problem. Just do whatever you have in order to protect your customers from the problems you're dealing with. And then once the problem has been contained as best as possible, it's time to clearly describe the current situation. And in order to do this, we must go see the problem with our own eyes in order to get the facts. And this will require talking to people throughout the organization in order to better understand the challenges at hand. Now, you see, the perceived problem may be different depending on who you talk to. So, for example, we have the salespeople who may say we have no product, and then second, on another aspect, the planners will say sales is always changing our forecast. And then on the third note, you see the production people saying we need a new machine. So the important thing here to keep in mind is that all of these things may be true, yet none of them may be the correct problem statement. So we start first with going to the questions to ask when clarifying a problem. Now, there are also some questions. These are the questions that must be addressed as we work to clarify the problem. So first, you must understand what the ideal situation is. Many times, organizations have no idea what good looks like. So before they work to improve things, they must determine what success looks like. After this, we must understand how solving the problem adds value to the customer and to the company. Well, some would refer to this as identifying the burning platform. And then next, we must also work to visualize the gap. between the current idea using things like pictures, charts, and graphs. And then finally, while we're practicing this process of going to see, we must do our best to avoid yes or no questions, okay? Instead, we should ask open-ended questions, such as the 5W1H1, which stands for what's the problem, where is it happening, when did it happen, who does it affect, and why is it a problem, how did it happen. Okay, now next we put our attention to how to writing a good problem statement. This is an extremely important part of the practical problem solving, if I may emphasize. So first of all, problem statements should be focused on the current situation while clearly identifying the gap. Problem statements should also be measurable and clear. So in other words, using words like a lot or not enough is not sufficient. So instead, we need to be clear and state exactly what we are dealing with. And then next, a good problem statement does not contain a cause or a suspected cause. So for example, assigning the blame for company ABC's poor on-time delivery to a lack of accurate forecasts would be an example of assigning a potential cause already. And then, so we don't want to do this, no? And then likewise, a good problem statement does not include a solution. It's often tempting for us to include both a potential cause and solution, no, in the problem statement, but we must fight the urge, as doing so weakens the overall power of this problem solving process. So, and finally, good problem statements are factual, within scope, short, and to the point. Okay, so now, most people like to tell a long story as part of the problem statement, when in fact, the problem statement itself should ideally be one sentence. Okay, it's okay to add another sentence or two to provide additional, say, additional background, as long as it follows this mentioned do's and don'ts. All right. And then we go to the next part, the next step, which is um, planning and then breaking down the problem. Okay. So what we do here is, once it's been recognized that there is in fact a gap or a problem between the current and the ideal situations, most probably the reasons for this gap are many as well as unclear or vague. In other words, we may still have quite a lot of work to do, no, before we can single out a specific problem to deal with. So let's spend some time discussing how to go about breaking down the particular problem. The first step we need to do is to break down and organize the originally large problem into smaller, more concrete problems. There are many ways to organize these smaller problems. However, the most often used principle for arranging them is by asking questions such as, what is the problem? Where is it happening? When does it occur? And who is it impacting? Who is being impacted? So by doing this, we'll be able to break the process down into manageable pieces. So in order to solve one at a time, as each may be contributing to the overall problem. Essentially, all we're doing here is breaking the problem down, no, in such a way that allows us to move forward effectively and efficiently by focusing on key issues. So this is something that's very important to keep in mind. This part here is never to ask why or jump towards causes or solutions, since will happen soon enough. Okay, it could be a frequent mistakes in some situations, but we must strive to never do that. Okay, and then we go to the point of cause. Now, once you've successfully broken down the problem, Then we'll be in the position to confirm the facts and determine the points of cause, which describes where the problem is happening within the process. Now, in order to be able to identify the point of cause, or in some cases, causes, we must try to visualize the process, since where there is an output, there's a process. Okay, to do this, we can use things like flowcharts and other graphs, as we'll soon see. So when we try to look at what tools to break down the problem, so that's the next part actually. There are many tools that can help you visualize the what, where, when, and who have a problem. We have the Pareto diagrams, the tree diagrams, pie charts, scatter plot diagrams. And then we start looking into prioritizing which of these issues to begin with. Okay, once you're able to identify the primary points of cause, it's time to prioritize the problem. No, to do this, there are some questions that will help prioritize what problems are attacked first, second, and so on. First, we must determine the level of importance. Okay, to do these questions, how long has this issue existed? Okay, and then we must strive, or we must do our best to answer that. And for example, next question is, what impact is it having on team members as well as the company? You can ask that question. And then next, we must assess the level of urgency by asking questions such as, who does this problem affect? And that's what really is, that's synonymous to what was mentioned earlier on. Okay, next question. And does this affect the company's key performance metrics? Okay. Finally, we must assess the potential for expansion by asking questions such as, what will happen if we ignore this problem? All right. Will it stay the same, or will it get worse? So once you and your team have prioritized the problems or issues you're addressing, you've accomplished the primary objective of this second step and are ready to move on to the next step, step 3 of the practical problem solving process. Okay, then let's move over to the next slide. Step 3, set a target. Well, setting targets that we will hit is an important step, because it really forces us to make a commitment. So to be sure, this target, or targets as it may be, should be definitely be a challenge, but also something that helps us limit the scope, you know? In other words, it becomes a must-do target. And remember, we only need this target to take us one step towards the ideal, meaning it doesn't have to be a giant leap towards perfection. So instead, we'll focus on taking one solid step at a time. Then we start looking at the targets, SMART targets in particular. Um, this is actually an extremely important acronym. We call it SMART, and SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. And as you've probably guessed by now, these 5 words offer the perfect roadmap for target setting. So let's start looking at each one in turn. So 1, targets must be specific and not general in scope. So for example, a general target may be, I want to spend more time with my kid, with my children. A better, more specific target would be, I will spend an additional 3 hours with my children each week. Okay, that one is specific. And then secondly, measurable. In other words, we must be able to see and measure success in a qualitative manner. So a poor target then would be to improve customer satisfaction. How can we make it better? A better target might be to increase the median score of the annual customer satisfaction survey by 10%. Okay, not only is the latter more specific, it's also is measurable. And then targets must be attainable, meaning you're confident and excited about your ability to achieve them. So truly attainable targets, really, these are the ones where you can see your progress being made. So it's much like mountain climbers experience as they climb higher and higher. Okay, the R in this SMART stands for realistic, and it's closely linked to being attainable. The same, the only way to boil the ocean is one teaspoon at a time. Sums it well. So this statement is so you see this setting off to conquer an important goal, such as boiling the ocean, but will do nothing but frustrate you, frustrate your team. So we must take care to always set goals and targets that are both realistic and challenging at the same time. Then targets. Targets must be time bound. In other words, we must state when we hope to reach the goal or a target in question. Um, and this is extremely important as it creates a sense of urgency and commitment, no? Okay. And then another concept to keep in mind here is something called the Parkinson syndrome. And it basically states that if you give someone a deadline next Friday, okay, they'll typically finish the task next Friday. And then if you give the same person the same task with a deadline of next Wednesday, they'll typically find a way of getting the job done on Wednesday. So, well, we're not really recommending you to simply, shorten the deadlines. What we are saying is that time bound targets can really be powerful motivators. And there you have it, darling friends. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see similar videos in the future, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel down below, and hit the notification bell as well so that you don't miss out on important updates. In the next videos, we'll start looking into more detail about the remaining steps of the practical problem solving. So stay tuned. Thank you. Bye.